Recognizing the member for Richmond South Centre.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I would like to start, first of all, acknowledging that we own the Algonquin-speaking territory. We own the traditional city territory of the Algonquin-speaking people, specifically the Songhean Esquimalt First Nation. I want to thank them for allowing us to live, work, and play on ancestral land. I definitely want to make sure we start responding to our throne speech with a good way. I will take a moment to thank the Richmond South Centre Richmond South Centre constituents for sending me here to represent them, to really reflect many of the challenges we're facing, and to really bring their voice to connect with our different ministries and different level of government to support our community as we grow together. Today, I want to take a moment to speak about our throne speech. I think that one of the things that I do sincerely appreciate the throne speech, it comes with a very humble voice to talk about that we, as British Columbians, are facing different challenges. Challenges facing a different level when it comes to housing, affordability, inflation, healthcare. And our government is stepping up and making sure we're doing our best to taking care of that. We do need to consider how we're going to build a stronger BC together, and we need to build a stronger future. I understand also, prior to my time, that our government has worked hard with various level community to support British Columbians. Unfortunately, COVID-19 hits in 2020 and set everything back. Our government swiftly responded to finding a way to support British Columbians, finding a way to support small and medium-sized businesses to ensure that we open and close under scientific and proper guidance of Dr. Bonnie Henry, to ensure that we allow our British Columbia to be ready to open in a gradual, appropriate, and a well-paced manner that allows the economy to thrive. Putting people at the center of our government is a choice that's resulted in economic growth, and we're here to deliver more. One of the first things I do want to take a moment to almost brag a bit about is how we fix ICBC. We restructure our public insurance, put ICBC back on solid financial footing, and turning ICBC to one of the lowest rates in Canada. Instead of losing billions of dollars, we're helping British Columbians saving money with ICBC. Our employment rate has also been nearly record low. With more people working before than the pandemic and more job opportunities coming ahead. All of these led to a multi-billion-dollar surplus this year. However, we do need to anticipate potential economic challenges ahead of us. We together can work and build a stable, secure, stronger, and more sustainable future together. So how do we help people with different costs, according to the throne speech? The new BC Affordability Credit landed in the bank account at the start of the new year to help 85% of British Columbians with increased costs. As much as $410 for a family of 4 went to British Columbians last month. Basic car insurance rate has been frozen for another 2 years, and a $100 credit reducing everybody's hydro bill. In December 2022, childcare costs was reduced again, this time by as much as $550 more a month for each child, or over $6,000 a year in additional savings. And as a father of 2, I cannot express how deeply grateful I am that we are helping our families to make life more affordable. Because families are facing different challenges. That we are even able to say the living wage by hour has been reduced due to our investment in childcare. We also reduced ICBC rates by an average of $490 a year, and we end the tolls on the Lower Mainland. We eliminated medical premium, which represent the largest median middle class tax cut in a generation. And this fall, the significant childcare saving all governments delivering will continue beyond the kindergarten age and will be extended to parents with school age. One of the interesting things I do want to take a moment to also express for one of our previous MLA who used to sit here, who helped to advocate for the increased to the introduction of a pay transparency legislation. It is a critical tool to shine a light to the gender pay gap and more closely to equal pay for equal work. Our government is also determined to go after organized crimes, rich tax evaders, and corrupted officials from around the world who mistakenly think they can hide in BC at the expense of hardworking people. Our government is going to send a strong message by seizing their home and profits. Of course, we also need to understand British Columbians are facing housing challenges. For far too long, the housing market has been worked well for speculators, and it worked very well for investors who used the housing crisis to make excessive profits by purchasing homes and flipping them at a higher price. All of this has driven down the cost of housing and put it out of reach of many average British Columbians. Our government will take strong action to address the issue. We will crack down on speculation, and we will continue to support speculation and vacancy tax, which has already helped turning 20,000 empty condos into rental homes for people in the Metro Vancouver area alone. Helping keeping housing prices and rent lower is one of the priorities for our government, and we understand British Columbia is still struggling right now. And we understand we need to have greater urgency in investment to increase our affordable housing of every kind. For example, construction for rental housing for people was up 10% last year. This was the highest on record and 7 times what it was a decade ago. Our government also addressed unfair strata restriction on empty condo. And I do want to take a little bit moment talking about this strata, because I actually did with my office a consultation with constituents to talk about how the strata restriction removal helps. Surprisingly, one of the interesting topics was brought up is in our community, there were all, unfortunately, quite a few empty units. We were also addressing rental units that was illegally rented out, despite restriction of a strata. Some of our strata unit owners were actually encouraged to know once the restriction removed, they are better able to target and explore what kind of illegal rental units happening, and to ensure that we actually increase our rental support and ensure that rental is being done properly and legally. We will also be investing $500 million in a new rental protection fund. We will also be working with municipalities to set ambitious targets to deliver more housing where it is needed most. In the fall session, after working with local government, home builders, and communities, new laws will be introduced to turn that strategy into new affordable homes, and we will continuously support British Columbians. I know the previous speaker mentioned something about UPCC, and I do want to take a moment to share some personal experience with UPCC as well, since we're going to be talking about healthcare, which was also part of our throne speech. As a father of one toddler and one infant, I actually had two different opportunities to visit UPCC. Once when one of my children was having an eye infection, the other one is during a fever. And both times I was able to walk into UPCC with a reasonable amount of wait time, get the service needed, and walk out. And at that time, we didn't see a doctor. We see a nurse practitioner who had sufficient learning and education to provide a sufficient guidance for us. One of the nurse practitioners reminded us, even though as young parents, we might be anxious when we see our children with symptoms. She taught us that not every eye infection need to be addressed, but she still provided a prescription so that we can actually provide antibiotics for my child's eye. Of course, when we're dealing with fevers, the other nurse practitioner was reminding us that at a certain degree, we don't need to be worried about rushing the child into a medical service. And she provided us a guideline, provided us a printout, walk us through everything. And this was all done by a nurse practitioner. The timing was reasonable. My family and I had to bring both kids to wait in UPCC. And I think anybody who have young children can understand that kids in waiting room is difficult to manage. We're very thankful the timely service being provided, that we didn't face any difficulty and able to get a service we need, just like everyone else was waiting in that room too. I also want to take a moment to also talk about our government's continuous desire to invest in hospital. We invest in a new medical school at SFU and expanded medical school at UBC. We are trying our best to continuously work in different ways with a multi-pronged approach dealing with a complex issue. I understand it's when we're dealing with something challenging and overwhelming, it is easy for us to look at a challenge and difficulty and hoping for one silver-bullet solution. But British Columbians understand that healthcare is a complex issue. Healthcare requires long-term investment, and healthcare requires dedication and services to train British Columbians of today to be ready for tomorrow. That is the reason why I'm so glad that we're investing in the infrastructure, capital spending of hospitals around British Columbia. We have increased the medical school at SFU to ensure that we can generate a next generation of doctors. And we expand the medical school at UBC. And these are important steps that we're moving forward. And of course, that's not it. We'll continue our action to actually allow internationally trained doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers in hospital to quickly transition into the profession. That's one thing I continuously say at every speech I can make, is that investing in British Columbians is one of the most important priorities for our government. British Columbia is our most important resources. And I will echo some of my colleagues' earlier comment too, is we have bright, intelligent, dedicated immigrants who are coming to our province, who have demonstrated our province's previous success by voting with their feet, by voting with bringing their family here, to wanting to live here and to raise their family. And it's our job and our government's continuous effort to ensure we maximize their potential, that they can serve, live, and play in British Columbia, our beautiful province, in a way that we can all prosper together. That's why we're so glad that 2,000 internationally educated nurses are now being fast-tracked in the healthcare system right now. And of course, healthcare is also one of our biggest challenges that our provincial government is facing at this point. We're trying to find different ways going from different ways to address the issue, but we also need a stronger partner. That's why I'm so glad our Premier and in our effort to set up a historical agreement with our federal government. We are working together to increase a proper partnership and proper collaboration so we can bring the proper resources to support British Columbians and to help our British Columbia's healthcare system investing in them concretely, comprehensively, and properly. This is great news, and we need to continue to work on that. And the pandemic has not officially left us yet at this point. We're facing a lot of global pressure from pandemic, including inflation right now. And our province is working well with our business sector, with our counterparts, with communities to ensure we're taking care of British Columbians. As our population increases and ages, there's a growing demand for all healthcare services, particularly in cancer care. Close to 90 people every day are diagnosed with cancer in BC, and unfortunately the number will only increase. That's why we need to continue to work and build upon our healthcare system, fight cancer, and find a way to invest in diagnostic imaging, early detection, and treatments. Now I'd like to take a moment to talk about safer community. I think everyone who has a family, who has an elder in the family, who have extended family, all share one similar passion, which I mentioned earlier today in my statement, that British Columbia want a safe place to raise their family. But communities in BC and across North America, we are seeing our street changing for the worse. Obviously, this did not happen overnight. It is a product of a decade of cuts of supports and services in BC and chronic underinvestment in housing. It is a consequence of changes in federal laws, subsequent Supreme Court decisions. Unfortunately, it's also a product of a toxic drug supply that hurts even more people than it kills, leaving many families struggling, people with serious brain injuries, and of course, many lives prematurely lost. None of this happened overnight. and our government sympathizes with our families and all British Columbians. And that's why it's important for us to work together. There's no one solution. It will take collaboration between police, prosecutors, mental health experts, community service provider, and our government to work continuously to support British Columbians. We also need to talk a little bit more about repeat offender as well. Our legislation will be introduced to crack down on gangs and obviously money laundering. As part of the Safer Community Action Plan, our government is implementing a new response team to track, arrest, jail repeat offenders as well. These teams are made up of police, dedicated prosecutors, and probation officers. It is investing to ensure that RCMP can operate its full capacity to keep people safe, particularly in the rural area of British Columbia. Again, I want to re-emphasize one of the challenges we face as British Columbians, which is a very positive and welcoming challenge, is people are moving here at record high numbers. People are voting with their feet because our government is taking the British Columbian and we are a healthy, inclusive community. But that also means we as a province need to be ready for the incoming new wave of different community members and immigrants to ensure we are ready to take care of them. And I'm glad our throne speech addressed that issue. BC will have record investment to support local government in responding to the growth that we are seeing in different communities and making sure our community is stronger and more livable for families. We will continue to fund enrollment in classrooms, recruitment of new teachers, and building new schools in fast-growing parts of the province. Progress will continue on the Broadway subways project in Vancouver and Surrey to Atlantic SkyTrain, the first rapid transit project south of Fraser River in 30 years. Our government will, of course, continue to support inclusivity and come back against hate. We will have new anti-racism action plan, and that will be launched for K-12 students to ensure schools are welcoming for everyone. And there's one specific point of law throne speech I want to further emphasize. Is the legislation will also be introduced this session to address the malicious, exploitative, non-consensual sharing of intimate images. There's a reason why I specifically want to talk about this legislation. As an MLA, I have come across quite a few different cases, and one of the most heartbreaking cases I've ever addressed was a Chinese-Canadian woman who walked into my office, was sharing with me her frustrating, heartbreaking of her relationship. And she's wondering what kind of issues she should be addressing. I think one of the comments she actually brought up once was that her husband threw dishes at her. But her anticipation is the dishes missed her. Therefore, she does not see that as violence. That scared me for that moment. And then at the same time, too, is because they're still living together at that time, she noticed her husband will sneak around with camera, taking pictures of her while she's sleeping. She's extremely uncomfortable with that, and she asked what kind of support can be done about it. And all the stories being shared reminded us that so much work needs to be done. We need to protect people. People should have the right to be safe, to feel comfortable, to thrive in their home. And yet, we are still facing different forms of domestic abuse, domestic violence, and disrespect of one another in a way that's unacceptable in our community. And as this cross aisle, be able to speak to all female legislators, we understand many of them have faced different challenges in the past. And I want to express my sympathy and support for the hardship they have been faced, and we thank you for your courage. But I do want to emphasize the importance that we must ensure that this legislation is strengthened and delivered so we can protect British Columbians so they may feel safe again in their home. I also want to take a moment to talk about reconciliation. I think one of the important things that I've actually noticed, of course, for the last 2 years, is our MLAs and our elected officials' continuous dedication of land acknowledgement through community events. One of the things that I want to say I'm very reassured, I want to say heartwarming, is that starting seeing different community groups who might struggle, who might have a little bit of limited understanding of truth and reconciliation, and not becoming curious. They start asking questions, because they might not have a full awareness of what's offered out there and what kind of challenge have experienced. The Indigenous community in Canadian history went through a bloody, hateful, discriminative history that cannot be compared to any other form of racism. Even though I experienced different form of racism, I want to express my sincere and deepest sympathy to the Indigenous community and want to work with them as our government works with them through truth and reconciliation. But we need to continuously foster this understanding, foster this awareness, and foster this partnership. And I was very excited when we were hearing about different ways of our government finding to work in a government-to-government relationship. Truth and reconciliation is a complex issue. I want to re-emphasize that. I've been seeing so many comments talking about points here and there as though truth and reconciliation can be resolved with a snap of a finger. It takes years of dedication. It takes continuous advocacy. It takes unwavering determination for all government, on both sides of the aisle, to work together to continuously share our land acknowledgement, to continuously work with our community members, and to continuously educate ourselves. As I too am still trying to learn the truth and reconciliation every step of my life. And I too have to admit, I don't understand not even close to enough about truth and reconciliation. And I want to welcome all my colleagues whenever we go out in the community. Please share your land acknowledgement to demonstrate your support of truth and reconciliation and to support of the community who has faced one of the most bloody history in our Canadian history. And I also want to take a moment to talk about our economy, especially when it comes to environment. As I mentioned earlier today, it's one of the biggest things that truly bothers me and, of course, my constituent is food security and water security. We need to find a way to making sure that we need to work with farmers, ranchers, and producers to ensure a sustainable local food system while creating opportunities that boost economy and strengthen food security. I think pandemic taught us a very clear lesson. International trade is good for growth and prosperity, but we also must understand when we face different kind of international challenges, it puts barriers on our ability to thrive. It puts barriers for our ability to have food security and water security. And we need to find a way to continue to promote innovation that will increase efficiency in food production using new technologies and investment such as BC Center for Agri-Tech Innovation in our Fraser Valley. And we also need to continue to focus on our Asian Pacific Gateway and our United States as our family culture ties are connected with various countries and a form of economic dependency with one another. And I'm glad that in our throne speech that we are planning to expand our trade relationship and create new opportunities for people and BC businesses. Our government will make trade mission to emerging market as a priority. I think one of the very important lessons we also must understand to look at different challenges we're facing through the climate change that we're experiencing today. Our world is changing, and that's a reality of life. And the fact that previous to us, our community, including myself too, we have not done enough investment to protect our environment, to ensure that we're doing our best way to support our community, support our climate change, to ensure that we do not face the currently experienced climate emergencies, such as heat dome, forest fire, drought, flood. Those are an example of what with years of neglect can add up to. And unfortunately, we also need to understand when we have dealing with years of neglect, it doesn't take the same amount of time to fix the situation. It takes more effort. It takes more comprehensive determination and resource spending to ensure that we can match and support to minimize the damage and to reverse. And I think it's a very strong paradigm for us to look at that it is important for us to continue investing in healthcare, education, in British Columbia, and in climate change actions to ensure that we can continuously slow down some of the difficulties and ensure we will have a brighter future for all British Columbians. That's why I'm so proud of our groundbreaking Clean BC roadmap to 2030. The plan to put us on reaching a net zero, as well as to being a leader and inclusive economy growth. BC eliminated the largest subsidy for oil and gas companies to give to British Columbians a fair return and allow us to reinvest into our priorities. Over the next couple of months, our government will act with increased urgency to make BC to meet its ambitious climate action plan. We'll also see our government accelerate our work to protect more BC's old growth forest in partnership with First Nations rights holders in the months to come. And we will also work with our First Nation communities and stakeholders to protect our watershed, our clean water sources, now and for the future generation. We will continuously invest in BC so we may become an international leader in future-proofing our infrastructure to make it more climate resilient. It is why a Ministry of Emergency Management and Climate Readiness was created. And I want to bring back all serious. I'm going to echo both sides of the colleague. British Columbians are facing challenges. We cannot deny that fact. Our government is working hard with our community partners to continue taking on different challenges. We have to start investing. We have to support different services to ensure mental health, healthcare, education, housing, affordability, rising costs, childcare can continue to be a priority for our government as we continue to find a way to support British Columbians. And of course, we cannot ignore one of the most important things that British Columbia is becoming a more inclusive process day after day, and we need to continue to invest in our effort to fight against hate, fight against historical wrong. That's why I'm also glad that this summer we'll have a grand opening of a Chinese-Canadian museum in Vancouver, Chinatown's historical Wing Sing building. We are in this together, and as a British Columbian, as an MLA for Richmond South Centre, I just want to say I'm so glad to be here to join friends from both sides of the aisle to work together in partnership, in collaboration, and goodwill as we continue finding ways to ensure we are supporting British Columbians yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.